Now, we had this spade of incidents, and I know that our brother Mustafa, you were at one of the centers where these 5 young men, one of whom was a friend of Yusuf's, decided that they wanted to go overseas and see if they could join a movement that I think they thought to help. How did that happen?
Well, we're still learning the facts of this case, but I'm as baffled as you are. All of this is shocking to me.
What
well.
I mean, obviously, you weren't teaching them anything that would cause them to.
No, on the contrary, we talked about the positive things. We talked against these type of groups, and again, it's shocking to me.
But this is for everybody here. When we're having this discussion about Muslims, if Muslims are suffering in Somalia, they're suffering in Pakistan, what do you tell people? These are young people who are in pain.
We need to have the open discussions on these things, and it's important about that. That's critical.
And it's shut down in the mosque.
Exactly, and you need to have it.
Shut down in the mosque.
Yeah, and you need to have it in these safe spaces.
So part of what you're saying is that when you hear on a Friday on your way to prayers that 100 people were killed in the marketplace in Iraq or in Pakistan or in Palestine, that's not a discussion that they have in the mosque?
You need to have it. Don't shut down the free marketplace of ideas. Embrace it. Because it's about talking about these ideas and then coming up with solutions that way. But if you don't talk about these things, people are going to go to other places. That's why it's real important.
All right, so Mustafa, is that what you're saying? Your people are getting this from other places?
Well, what I'm saying is that these youth, we have a indication that there was some online learning of some religious texts, and that's what I'm hearing from the news. Cyber terrorism is real, and again, we should have an outlet to talk and discuss conflicts that's happening overseas with Muslims, so that they could learn the proper channel, the proper outlet for these frustrations.
But you know something, he brings an excellent point about the news, because we have to be very, very careful, because the news certainly has not dealt with our community in a good way around this issue. And we have to be the ones who define this, because if we don't watch out, we'll create this whole fifth column, this whole kind of, you know, homegrown sale type situation. So we have to seize the initiative.
And that's precisely the reason.
But isn't a part of this, Matthew, you knew my friend, I can say this, isn't there a part of that inability to do that, exactly what Alejandro said? You got to have an open, you got to admit that you got a problem.
But it's part of the problem would be just the diplomacy of it. When you hear everybody's a terrorist, everybody's Al-Qaeda.
Exactly.
Everybody's a radical.
I can tell you right now, most people don't even know what Al-Qaeda is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We use these buzzwords. We use these sensationalistic buzzwords.
I mean, but they may not know, but guess what? That image is out there, and that's what people do. The media tends to make things simplistic, and they make simplistic agendas. Terrorism, a case in point. We got a guy who flies a plane in Texas into a federal building. That's not terrorism.
They waffling.
No, they're not waffling.
I read it
they're
myself.
not calling it what it is.
Definition, that is terrorism.
That's terrorism. They're not calling it what it is.
Maggie, can you define terrorism for us?
Quite simply, terrorism is an unlawful act used against governments and civilians and populations in order to further a political agenda or idea. That's the federal definition of terrorism used by both the Justice Department and the State Department. And you tell me a guy who puts fuel in a plane, flies into the IRS building, and then leaves all this information about how he hates the Internal Revenue and the government and so on like that. If that doesn't fit terrorism, then I don't know what does.
Or even the Pentagon shooter as well.
But seriously, though, if somehow it seems that we're just concentrating on the media and Al-Qaeda, but what about the U.S. foreign policy? In the case of Somalia, we keep talking about 20 men Somali have left, 22 young Somalis. Where did they go to Somalia? When did they leave? Nobody asks really why did they leave, when did they leave, because we have the brutal Ethiopian invasion that took place eve of Christmas 2006, supported by the previous U.S. administration under the banner of terrorism.
So
it goes beyond that.
So while we're having this discussion, are you saying that it's justified?
No, we're not saying it's justified, but when the invasion took place, it invaded not only the people inside Somalia, but it invaded in the heart and soul of every Somali. It
I don't
invaded
think we're saying that it's
the household.
justified. I think we're saying it should be just. When you
No,
look at the situation, it should be just as what the sister is saying.
But what we
Look
say-
at the whole
Another than just
parameters
the
of what's
issue,
going on.
For example, when the boy picked up a gun in Virginia Tech,
Yes.
we went back to study what went wrong.
Ah,
But we don't do that with the
okay.
Muslims.
All right, so there needs, but I think we're now reaching, Mustafa, I think we're reaching that place now where, and I know you, because of the ongoing investigation, you can't talk a lot about it, but we're trying to go back and deconstruct what happened with these kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there is another perspective. The onus should be also the parents as well, explaining what is happening overseas and giving some of their approach. We need to do more of that. These type of discussions not only should be from the sermon on the Friday prayers, also in the mosque, but they also should be with the parents as well.
Well, no,
So
you know,
that-
Yes.
now I have
why
to
is
give
it-
credit. I have
but
to
why
give
is it-
credit. I have to give credit because the community Mustafa was in, the parents did come forward
Right.
and engage law enforcement and say something is going on, and we shared and engaged. It probably saved those kids' lives and the lives of other people.
And plus, we don't want to create youth. We don't want to create youth who are insensitive to the injustices that they see in Somalia, here in the United States, or in Pakistan, or any other place in the world.
Again, embracing the free
But what we
market
need
of
to do
ideas.
is provide opportunities and give them a way to address the social and economic injustices that they see. But we don't want to create young people who don't.
But I'm with you. At the same time, what a lot of times I think we hear is a kind of NIMBY jihad idea. It's okay to fight over there, but it's not okay to talk to young people over here about that injustice because they might want to do something. And what is it?
but
But
that's
part of the
double
discussions
standards,
also
isn't it?
need to have religious leadership to deal with this issue, though, as well. I think it's
But
critical
why-
to have that.
I mean,
But
Matthew's been honest.
But,
and we've been
exactly.
silent.
but why is
Yeah.
it only the religious responsibility of the religious people or the parents? What about the U.S. government? It's supposed to protect its citizens. When you have a foreign
makes a great
policy that
point.
negatively affects
Yes,
the
okay.
people they left behind, because the Somalis, for example, they left their parents, uncles, aunts, brothers, and
suffering.
sisters, and they're getting killed.
Which
So
goes to my
these
point
kids
again.
need to see a government
Indeed.
that protects them
indeed.
here and abroad.
Hold on.
We're not trying to find excuses, but what I am saying that we have to look at all of the salient factors. And one of the salient factors in America is that indeed we live in a violent society.
Indeed.
So it's got to have some type of I'm not a clinical psychologist, but it's got to have some effect.
Well,
How do we
I'm
change
with
the
you.
policies?
I'm with you. I want to try to draw us a little bit together. I think that while we are looking at this, there are some teachable moments from the American civil rights movement.
That's where we're going with the Straight
Okay.
Path Project at Mass.
Right. So because responding to violence with violence, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, seems to be a popular narrative. The idea that if somebody says to you, well, what would you do? What would you do if somebody killed your family?
Right.
The response to that, what's the response to that?
It would make you think. That's why we need to analyze, figure out how to prevent these sort
I
of
think the
things.
purpose
So we
is
have
the
to have a
questioning of
preventive
that.
measures.
Can we even have the discussion? Can we go further than that? Than looking at the
Because once you
superficialness of
open
it?
this door, it sounds like you're an apologist for terror.
No,
Exactly.
I'm not for or against anybody. But we have to be just when we look at a situation. We must analyze it from all ends
All right.
and be just with what it is.
This is a critical conversation. I know we're opening Pandora's box, but clearly there needs to be a safe space with law enforcement, with our community leadership, to have a discussion about
But
what's
especially
the what's the underlying problems that are causing young people to find other alternatives.
And that's what we need. We need synergy between not only within the Muslim community, but also with the government, with nonprofit organizations, and learn from events like this. What we need is more synergy.
But it's difficult to have synergy. It's difficult to have synergy if you're in Irvine, California. You got agent provocateurs being placed into our community. What kind of synergy is that?
But this is why it's important to also have civic engagement as well to change these very policies.
By the way,
But how do you have a civic engagement?
I love
when-
this.
Through
I love
civic
this
education.
engagement that we're having. I love this engagement we're having, and this is all the engagement we're going to have today. All right? But we're not going to let this go. I think this is a dialogue. We need to do some focus groups and to keep this conversation going.
Sure.
So that's all we have time for in this episode. I think we took up, right up to the last minute, and I thank all of my guests for being here today. And I want to thank you for watching, and I invite you to tune in next week for part 2 of this discussion. And inshallah, God willing, I will share my final thoughts with you about this later on. Until then, I'll be living Islam in America.